delay here. For those of you joining us on Facebook Live, my name is Rodney Hakim, and I am the voice behind the New York Shakespeare social media feeds. And we welcome you to tonight's live stream interview, our panel discussion celebrating, or rather marking, the Ides of March. Beware the Ides of March, as is famously said in Julius Caesar. Tonight we have the great privilege to discuss Julius Caesar, to take a deep dive into this most infamous of Roman plays with a cast and crew of people who are just presenting right now a fantastic version of Julius Caesar, and that is the director and the cast of Shakespeare At. Sean and crew, hello, please say hello to our audience here on Facebook Live.
Hello.
Hey, gang.
All right, so we are joined tonight by Sean Hagerty, the artistic director of Shakespeare At. Hello, Sean.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rodney.
You are welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We have 4 fantastic cast members tonight. We have Keith Hamilton Cobb. For those of you who have been following the New York Shakespeare social media feeds for a while now, you know that Keith is a regular on our programs. He was one of our interviewees, as was Sean, on our interview program on Instagram Live, and that's New York Shakespeare Live. You can catch all the past episodes on Instagram and also on YouTube. Hello, how are you, Keith?
I'm well, Rod. Good to see you.
Keith, who are you playing in this fantastic production of Julius Caesar?
Caius Cassius.
Caius Cassius. One of the principal characters in the play. We are also joined by Jordan Barbour. Hello, Jordan.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And Jordan is not only one of the stars of Julius Caesar, he is on The Inheritance on Broadway, or should I say, was sort of in The Inheritance on Broadway. Broadway itself was situation right now.
Yes.
Hello, Jordan. And Jordan, who are you in Julius Caesar?
I play Brutus in Julius Caesar.
All right. Okay. And then we have Aria Shaghasemi. Aria, you are one of our panelists here tonight. He is in Julius Caesar. You are?
Octavius Caesar.
Octavius Caesar. And you are also on Legacies on the CW on TV.
That's true.
We have the stars of stage and screen. And also both a stage and screen star, we have Ashlie Atkinson. Hello, Ashlie.
Hi, Ronnie. How's it going?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good. I'm happy to see everybody's faces tonight.
It's a pleasure. And Ashlie, remind me where we might have seen you. I know you were on Mr. Robot for a time. Is that right?
Yeah, I was on the 4th season of Mr. Robot. I was also, 2018, I was in the film Black Klansman, the Spike Lee picture. But theater people, I was part of year 2 of the Bridge Project, Sam Mendes globe spanning 12-person cast that performed The Tempest and As You Like It. From Hong Kong to Singapore to the Old Vic in London, basically.
So we have all of our panelists here tonight are quite accomplished performers. In Sean's case, Sean is a very accomplished director and teacher. Sean, you were in, as can be found in our past discussion with you on Instagram Live, you were for many years, you were the principal Shakespeare teacher at the Neighborhood Playhouse, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and Sean has been at the helm of Shakespeare At for since its inception. This is your company. When did Shakespeare At begin, Sean?
2018.
2018. So it's about 3 years in, and this past year, with the onset of the coronavirus pandemic and the shutdown of theaters, Sean Hagerty and Shakespeare At, and pretty much all of the rest of the theatrical world, had to adapt and change and grow. And the manner in which Sean and company decided to pursue their operations during the pandemic shutdown was with radio plays. They have produced 3 radio plays thus far. They started with Richard II, they moved on to The Tempest, and now they are doing Julius Caesar. Their plays are done in 4 parts, and they're all available at Shakespeare At's website. That's shakespeare-at.org. Before I go any further, I just wanted to mention that we have our 5 fantastic panelists tonight. We had scheduled for yet another member of the cast, and that was Sky Lakota Lynch. He was supposed to join us tonight. Unfortunately, he had a situation that arose that had to be attended to, an emergency situation. So we wish Sky the best, and we hope that all is well with him and his. We are again happy to have our wonderful panelists here tonight. So as I was saying, Sean and Shakespeare At have moved into the radio play format for Shakespeare for the past several months, and this is the third production that they put out. Sean, before we get into the discussion of Julius Caesar, can you give us an idea of what the process has been like? And we've spoken about this before, but for those who might have not have seen that discussion, what has the process been like of transitioning from doing all the work on stage that you've been doing all this time into the radio plays?
Well, it's been fascinating. It's been a lot of work. I think I was talking with Sydney Steele, who's the associate producer for the company, recently about this. We figured on average it takes about 4 months from beginning, picking up the text and adapting it, starting to compose the music, etc., casting, through to getting that last episode out. About 4 months. So it's a bigger project than I think your average listener would realize, and even that we realized before we went into it. So it was
when you were doing the theatrical presentations of Shakespeare At, typically how long a process were each of the stage plays?
I think rehearsal process is usually about 3 to 4 weeks. But again, you're looking at probably about the same amount of time if you're talking about from the moment I pick up the text and start adapting, and maybe even longer if I'm thinking long term.
Rodney, can I ask a question of Sean really quickly? Am I allowed to do that?
You are allowed.
I'm
You
curious.
have to pay me a little bit of money after the show.
Sean, do you find that there's a significant difference in adapting the script, like the edits that you would make for the stage adaptation versus
the sound
adaptation?
Absolutely, because and this was a conscious decision from the beginning, we want to stay away from narration. I feel like that, for me, that doesn't feel like it's really taking advantage of the audio or radio format. It feels like a kind of a cheat, like an audiobook. Just do an audiobook at that point.
Right.
And the limitations that you have are actually, for me, what open it up and make it creatively interesting. So, from the simplest thing of I need to introduce someone and I need them to say their name if there's a group of people so that the listener knows who they're talking to. That's probably the simplest example. But then it's about, okay, what sound effects are we putting in here? Where are people? What's the environment? What do we need to cut or adapt or edit to make it clear to the listener and dramatically interesting?
Cool.
All right. So we are here for a very specific reason, is that today is March 15th. March 15th is the Ides of March. And we all know the famous phrase that is perhaps the most famous phrase of Julius Caesar, and if not, perhaps all of Shakespeare, that is, beware the Ides of March. Who speaks beware the Ides of March in a play? Actually, who speaks that line in the play?
It's David Hargreaves, our delightful David, right? Like he plays. Oh, he's a dream. And it's funny because I have a deep, deep crush on David now, despite having never met the man in my entire life.
And that is a Facebook Live exclusive from New York Shakespeare.
Sorry?
That's a New York Shakespeare exclusive on Facebook Live.
It's true. Huge crush. Well, I was also part of Richard that Sean did right before this, or months before this, at the sort of beginning of the pandemic. It's all been in the same month for me. 2020 was about 2 weeks long.
It's all the same Thursday somewhere.
Right, exactly. So I got to know David during that process as well, and I just think he's tremendous.
Yeah.
Okay.
That kid's going places.
So past the actor who's speaking the words, it is spoken by the Soothsayer. And the Soothsayer, we don't really see much of him aside from the fact that he comes out and he says, beware the Ides of March. And then he kind of travels off. He's pursued by bears and exits stage left. Sean, what function does the Soothsayer have aside from speaking the words, beware the Ides of March?
I mean, I think that's his function.
That's pretty much it, right?
Practical about it.
Couldn't Shakespeare have given that line to one of the other characters? Did he need a separate character to say, beware the Ides of March?
Well, I think so, because then I mean, the whole play is about, it's an interesting question, right? I mean, the whole play is about power, political intrigue, the machinations of power, duty, ambition, all that. If you gave it to a senator, my feeling is that it would suddenly be about political maneuvering. You know,
Right.
Mitch McConnell
Right.
says this. Why? I mean, why would I believe him?
But it's true. It's true. And you know, the much of the play draws on a connection to the ancient Roman and ancient Greek texts. I mean, this is the story of ancient Rome.
Yeah.
And in those ancient texts, there was always the soothsayer, who was often blind but could see more than the other characters, the sighted characters could see, who was deaf but could speak the truth. So I think we have that instance here where we have that symbolic soothsayer who is speaking the truth of what all these other characters, whether it's Caesar and Mark Antony, Octavius, Cassius, Brutus, all of them can't seem to see. That the answer is very clear. There's a phrase, I don't know if you're familiar with it, that's crossing the Rubicon.
Yeah.
And we all know that Julius Caesar famously, after his exile to the northern country, crosses the Rubicon and re-enters Rome with his legions and declares war on the Senate, on Pompey the Great and the rest of the Senate. And this is famously within literature, within other forms of writing motifs. It's known that crossing the Rubicon is going past a threshold that you are certain to regret. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if it's certain to regret. That depends on who the winner is.
Okay, well, it's certainly something that
famously used in terms of it's not something you do. It was unheard of for any general to bring their troops into beyond to cross the Rubicon and bring their troops into the city. Unheard of to do that, and that's exactly what he did. And that's
what Caesar does. And he has the gall, he has the audacity, he has the guts to bring his legions in and make war against Rome. And eventually he wins. Eventually he becomes the emperor again. He becomes the primary mover and shaker in Rome.
Yeah.
Tell me, one of the questions for me, as someone who has been in the theater for a long time, who's been a lover of the works of Shakespeare from even before I got into the theater. For me, Julius Caesar has always stood out as one of the most unique of Shakespeare's plays, in the sense that it's the one in which you see the least of the central character. Julius Caesar, I think, is in Julius Caesar for all of maybe 2 scenes. Is that right? I think he has the scene with Calpurnia, and he has a scene where he's killed, and I think that's pretty much it.
And the ghost.
He has 1 or 2 more than that, but you're right. It's very brief.
I read recently that he has as many lines as Maria in Twelfth Night.
So it's
they have the same amount of lines. Fascinating.
Tell me about that. What is that something that is something that we should be taken aback by? Is it something that should bother us, or is it something that's just is a function of the way the story is told, where he himself is not required to be there to tell his story, and the story is more about all the characters that are kind of existing in his wake and kind of maneuvering around him?
I think it had to do with the Elizabethan, this is just my opinion, but I think it had to do with the Elizabethan political state. Caesar, although an emperor, was viewed in a sense as a king by Elizabethans. And of course, the deposition of a king is a very dangerous thing to talk about in Elizabethan England. And so I think there's a bit of, if you called it Caius Cassius, or if you called the play, Brutus and Cassius, you'd be saying something different. But you call it Caesar, and everyone obviously knew who he was. You call it that, and it's open to interpretation as to what you're saying. Is it about the tragedy of him being killed, or is it about celebrating liberty and the deposition of this king-like figure? So I suspect that might be why it's called Julius Caesar.
Well, yeah.
But also,
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Jordan.
I was going to say, I think Julius Caesar is more of an idea than an actual person. So the character, obviously, the character is a real person, but he looms large. Julius Caesar looms large without a corporeal body being there for the majority of the play. And one of the things that's so great about what Shakespeare does in this play, in Ides of Julius Caesar, we start with Brutus. So we think Brutus is our guy. Then we kind of jump to Cassius. Then we're sort of with Cassius for a bit. We come back to Brutus. And then we go to Mark Antony for 20 minutes. And so I think kind of what we're doing when we name this play Julius Caesar and then have it go all over the place is kind of telling the audience that this play is more about an idea. Marcus Brutus is constantly talking about this idea of what Julius Caesar is and the need to kill Julius Caesar because he's an idea, because of what he might become, because of this thing that he represents. And the destruction of that by these conspirators is something larger than just the death of a man. It's the death of an ideology. It's the death of an idea. It's the death of a city. It's the death of hope in many ways. So I think calling the show Julius Caesar, as opposed to, I agree exactly with what Sean was saying, if you call it Marcus and Brutus, it suddenly becomes their story. If you call it Mark Antony's revenge, it suddenly becomes that arc. If you call it Julius Caesar, and then much like Hitchcock did with, not Doris Day, what's her name?
Psycho.
Why can't it Psycho?
Yeah.
Thank you. Much like Hitchcock did, kills her off in the first 10 minutes or first 20 minutes. Then suddenly you're left wondering, well, who is this story about? And I think that's kind of the brilliant thing about the way Shakespeare structured Caesar and calling it Caesar, kind of leaves you with this idea of like, especially once Mark Antony comes in and completely sways the mob, it's sort of like, well, whose play is this? Whose story is this? And it's kind of the people's story in a weird way. The body politic is the main character of Julius Caesar.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that, and I think we can connect this to the idea that Julius Caesar, he's the idea, as you say, he's larger than life in many ways. I think we could all say that he's one of the most significant rulers in history. He's one of the most larger than life rulers in history, and to the point where the leader in Shakespeare's England, this is written in 1599. We are just at the end of the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, and we are about to transition into the reign of King James I of Scotland. But just before that happens, Queen Elizabeth I, she is the daughter of Henry VIII. And Henry VIII, I don't know if you're aware of this, Henry VIII was known to be an avid collector of many things, and he was one to
Wives.
extravagantly, go ahead.
That's where I had went to.
We all know the paintings of him with like a turkey leg in his hand and a goblet of wine. But beyond that, he was a mass collector of luxuries, of luxury goods. In the time that was, it was the Arras tapestries, it was golden trinkets, all kind of things like that. And if you go to Hampton Court, where King Henry VIII reigned, there still are on the walls of Hampton Court the Abraham tapestries that King Henry VIII collected, where he likened himself to Abraham, the biblical figure Abraham, who was the one who broke with convention and started a new ideology. In the second most important set that he had, he likened himself to Julius Caesar. Again, someone who crossing the Rubicon, someone who was transformative, a leader who was not afraid to break the mold and go beyond what the limit of the idea of rulership was. So I think we have, as you say, someone who's more than just a man, more he's transcends the idea of what a leader could be and takes it to a new level. Do you think that in some ways is Shakespeare, by putting that out in the play? I mean, of course, it's an entertainment. It's an entertainment for his audience. It's a connection to the popular Roman stories that his audience knows and loves. But is this, do you think, in some way, some kind of acknowledgement of the grandness of the of the reign of Elizabeth I? Can we connect Elizabeth I to Caesar in some way here? At the end of fin de siècle, at the end of her reign, Elizabeth I, or is that beyond the scope of what we're looking at here with Julius Caesar?
I mean, I think if you wanted to praise her, we've got ample evidence of that in a number of the other plays. I don't know. I mean, I'm open to ideas, but the themes of this and the questions posed feel different to me than a praising of Elizabeth. But you know, he knew where his bread was buttered, so.
Absolutely, yeah. And if it was in any way an ode to Elizabeth, I don't think her blood would be spilled so quickly and she'd be killed off so promptly in the play. So Caesar meets his grisly demise. He is stabbed by all of the people that he trusts, most notably Brutus et tu, Brute. And you guys did such a fantastic job with the audio process of putting all of that together. Sean, I have to jump into some of the technicalities of putting the radio play together. Do you have a Foley artist who is smacking slices of meat together? How is that stabbing sound, that wonderful stabbing sound made, and that bloodletting, how does that happen?
Well, that was Dan and Ellen of Sonic Designs. There are fantastic designers and engineers, and I can't praise them enough. They've worked all over. I mean, you've probably heard their work on TV, Broadway, award shows. They're fantastic. And we would go back and forth about a number of things. I mean, we could spend hours talking about a set of footsteps, you know, and we went back and forth about, you know, the sound of Cinna, the poet, how his head should sound being smashed in. And the stab sounds were another one. They'd bring me something and it would be good. And I would probably drive them a little crazy by going, nah, no, it needs to be more gruesome. I need to hear like gristle. I need to hear more. And we'd go back and forth and assemble it all together. Yeah.
How long of the process, Sean, kind of digging into the process of putting the play together? I know that you were talking about how the length of time you spent putting the radio play together is as long, if not longer, than putting the stage play together, including rehearsals. How much of that is the actual performances by the actors, and how much of it is some of those technical aspects, like the Foley, the sound effects, and some of the incidental music and things like that?
Well, the music is one of the first things we do. And we have a fantastic composer, Joan Melton, and then our orchestrator and music producer, Justin Goldner. And we start that pretty much right off so that we have the music once we're recording and we start to assemble the episodes. But the rehearsal process is essentially a week, isn't it, guys? And the recording is a week as well. And then
that's quick.
Do a number of Foley stuff as well. Not things like knives and swords, but jumping off of ships and being piked. And the best bit is asking everyone to get on and off a horse.
Always my favorite. It's
always
so
leads to hilarity.
To listen to. I love, that's my favorite bit.
Can you tell us, Ashlie, tell us, why is that your favorite? What did you have to do to make the impression of going
on a horse? Are you kidding me? I think so no, I just really enjoy the nuance of it. Is so funny. It's like, okay, Sky, you're gonna get off a horse, but you've been running, so and you're in more of a hurry. So like, it's less of a I'm here and more of like, I've got to get there quickly. Like Sean is very specific because we're telling these stories through these sounds. So but it's also just fully is such a, it's the only time other than the rehearsal process when we all get to be together and we're all just sort of like on the line doing crowd sounds and stuff like that. So in general, it's a pretty rowdy day, and I always feel kind of bad that they're trying to maintain order with, you know, these guys throwing in like funny, you know, things at the very end of a crowd, you know, stuff like that. Yeah,
I have to tell you, I was as I was listening to the first 3 episodes were released prior to today. The 4th and final episode of the series was just dropped tonight at 7 p.m. All 4 are available now, and that's at Shakespeare-at.org. It's all free. It's all available, although a donation would be kindly appreciated. But yeah, it's all there for you. You can download it. You can stream it. It's all free. It's all fantastic. Sean, each episode is roughly about half an hour. So you have about 2 hours worth of program there. And it seems to me like that for a Shakespeare like Julius Caesar, that seems like it's heavily edited. How much content did you trim out of the play?
A lot.
Did you lop off Act 5? Pretty much is that what happened?
Yeah. No. Well, you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier. You know, how to adapt the play for radio. And part of it is it's almost like the history plays. There are so many characters, and they're sometimes they come on for just one scene, and then we don't have any kind of resolution with them. And in this case, there's a whole parade of characters that come on in like the very last scene or next to last scene, who then just all kill themselves one after the other, and we don't know them. We don't care about them, and so you need to. And with it being audio, it's my opinion that we need to limit as much as possible within reason, keeping track of the characters, because we don't have the visual to go, oh, that's this person.
Right. And from your actors, do you ask something extra of them to fill in that lack of visuals? Is there something extra that you have to pull from them to make up for the fact that it's audio only and you're not engaging people in their other senses?
Well, acting is acting, and when you get a crew like this, I think, you know, sometimes my job has been just to step out of the way. Honestly, I mean, I sound like I'm, you know, it's true though. There's some phenomenal performances in this production. Not only by the people that we have present here. I'm gesturing as if people can see what I'm pointing at, but with the rest of the cast as well. And I think, if anything, I probably, if an actor hasn't done one of these before or something similar, they probably maybe get a little frustrated with me asking them to give me a little more, to put a little more into the voice. I need that a little more vehement. I need that a little more, you know, really, you know, poke at that person more, you know, whatever it is, because we don't have a visual. We need it in the voice. Would you guys, would you say that was true, that that I ask you to put more into the voice, or do you feel that?
Oh, you certainly do. No, because understandably, that's what it is. You know, we're trying to convey more without being able to be physically observed, to be seen. I have missed it in all of this work, listening to it, thinking, gee, that would be better if they could see what I was, you know, see the body language,
Right?
You know? Yeah, and I think that is a skill set that I'm having to learn.
Yeah, you know, for our 4 panelists here, aside from Sean, our performers, you know, you're all from the worlds of either stage or screen or both, where the majority of what you're doing is conveyed by your facial expressions or by your mannerisms of your body. So, I mean, this is more akin to voiceover work, you know. So, do you have experience with voiceover?
Yeah, I think it's yes, I do, and you know, with any acting that you're doing, you're always bound by the limitations of the medium that you're working in. So if you're working on, if you're doing theater, yes, your face is part of it, but it's your body, because, you know, the audience isn't right here. If you're doing film and television, it's much more intimate, it's much smaller. So, you know, moving into this medium of, you know, the radio play, your tool is your voice. And so, yeah, it's somewhat similar to voiceover. It's a little different because, you know, here we are, I am still doing a scene with Keith Hamilton Cobb. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's tricky to say whether or not it's voiceover, but it's the two of us as if we're doing a play. It's just, you don't have that visual element to it. And so what I found actually is that it's more like putting a microscope on the voice, right? Like, so if you're doing this in a theater, I think that we would still kind of have the same sort of vocal energy that is required of us in order to do this radio play, because I think that's the style that Sean is trying to emulate by calling it a radio play. But in this format, in this medium, you're kind of focusing more exclusively on just the power of what the voice does. And, you know, we weren't really seeing each other. I know for myself, when we were recording, I was acting in my apartment. Like, I was doing everything because all of these instruments are tied together. You know, my voice is tied to what my face is doing, is tied to what my body is doing. And in order for me to give the best vocal performance I can give, all those things have to work in tandem, I think. So yes, it is kind of like you are working out a different set of muscles than you're used to, but really it's just sort of focusing in on this different skill set that we as actors of various media have to use all the time.
I was speaking with one of the other cast members from Julius Caesar. That was Thea Stefan, who plays Calpurnia in the play. And that was on our most recent Instagram Live episode. And what she was telling me about was about how when you were recording Julius Caesar, it wasn't that the actors were just doing their sides into a microphone, is that you were actually working the scenes live with the other actors. Now, how did you make that happen?
Well, at first we would rehearse in Zoom so that people could have a visual. But when we recorded, we used a program called Clean Feed, which is audio only. And it's basically, it's kind of like Zoom, but for audio and specifically for recording. And I think you want to have the actors in the room, whether that room is together, whether that room is a stage, or whether it's a virtual room. You want them together. I don't think you want them just recording their bits. That there's something sterile about that to me. They can't listen to each other. They can't work off each other. Some of the most interesting moments to me are reactions you hear from, I'm thinking of Keith and Jordan especially here, and even Ashlie, even with your scene with Jordan, where you can hear them listening to the other actor, and there might be a sigh, an acknowledgement, something that affects that other actor. I mean, that's acting right there. That you gotta have that.
Ashlie, tell us about your character. You play Porsche, who is the wife to Brutus. So what was that? What was it like to take on that role? It seems to me that the two wives in the play, we have Calpurnia, the wife of Julius Caesar, and we have Porsche, the wife of Brutus. And it seems like they parallel each other in some ways, that they're both pleading with their spouse, and kind of like what we said in the beginning with the Soothsayer, where they're speaking the truth of what they see the potential harm that is about to become of their character, of their loved one. And as much as they beg and plead with them to listen, no one wants to listen. They're maybe it's the masculine ego that they don't want to listen. They just want to go out and fight or whatever it is. What was that all like for you?
Well, I think first of all, it was just really fun. It's not a very big scene, but there's a lot of relationship in it. It was a delight to work with Jordan. I too was doing all of this stuff. Like there was a massive cleanup when I stabbed myself in the thigh. It was a whole thing. I'm just kidding. But thanks. But I do think that you guys have nailed something when you're talking about the Soothsayer and Calpurnia and Porsche around the idea of power and social and political power. And we see that these are three people who are in marginalized groups, the elderly and women, even in Elizabethan society. That is a comment on that current society as much as Roman society. And those are the three people who are able to see past the present moment into what could be the terror of the future. By the way, Thea wanted us to, she's gonna kill me for bringing this up. Thea texted me and was like, also Elizabeth didn't have an heir and neither did Caesar. So it could be as much like an invocation against civil war as it is. And I was like, okay.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And if you think about it, in some way, both Brutus and to some extent Octavius are somewhat almost like son figures to Julius Caesar, in that they are the ones that he confides in the most, or that he feels like might succeed him somehow, or might guide him at least in securing his power. Aria,
and then in the text, of Julius Caesar, the way that Calpurnia is introduced is in the foot race, right? Like they say, tap Calpurnia because she's sterile. So it's the idea that like somehow victory will shake off the sterility.
Right.
So we are introduced to her as a potential childbearing vessel, which is really interesting.
Right.
Which is really telling. When Jordan and Sean and I worked on that scene, I was struck even in our first read through. Jordan is such an incredibly generous scene partner, and don't listen, Jordan, I'm talking about incredibly generous and such a kind man, that as soon as we started reading this, I was like, oh, this is a couple that loves each other very much, and something has come in between them. And I think that all three of us were sort of already there with the idea that whether it was an illness or possibly a miscarriage, that something had transpired, and that this marriage that worked so well before was now two people that didn't know how to talk to one another, but that still care very, very deeply and love very, very deeply. And then Sean, and so that's where we went with it. And then Sean later was like, hey, guess what? I read this whole thing about how women in Elizabethan England would eat cold coals to nourish their baby. It would be like, I grew up in the American South, and women would eat red clay where I came from, like the red clay dirt, because of an iron deficiency. They would crave the dirt. And I imagine that the iron, the cold coals, is sort of the same thing. And I was like, oh man, how trippy that like Elizabethan women would eat cold coals to nourish a living baby, and then Portia commits suicide by eating hot coals.
That's a great connection.
With the absence of the child in her, which just felt like this, it's this amazing feeling where you get this like this validation or this echo from 400 years later, where you go like, yeah, maybe, okay, that stacks up for me and makes some sort of painful symmetry in my head that I love, and it's really nice to get to have the time to do that work in a radio play format, which I think a lot, I've heard other some other radio performances where I feel like there just wasn't that time always. And it's
for me as a listener, that's been one of the joys of the fact that it's been spread out over 4 weeks. Is the fact that I've been able to take each chunk and digest it and think about it and let it kind of sit with me for a few days, and then I get to the next one, and I'm anticipating, and I'm eager for the next one, and it's as if it's like a chapter a week, and I'm waiting to see where the next chapter of the story takes me. So it's a lot of fun. Now getting back to the idea of the plotters, the ones who Caesar and Caesar, if we didn't mention it thus far, is played with the fantastic verve by Patrick Page, who is all the news right now with his production of the villains of Shakespeare. He's fantastic as Julius Caesar in this. It's brief, but it's fantastic. And he's very magnetic, very powerful. And the gentlemen we have here are no slouches either. Keith, Aria, and Jordan. You're all fantastic in your roles, and you all bring a lot of energy, a lot of deep feeling to the roles. Keith and Jordan, you two have the most interaction with each other, as you two spend, I would say, the majority of the play either plotting with each other or starting to conspire against each other. So what was the process of putting all those relationships together with for you? Was it did you have to develop a feeling of a love for Caesar? Did you feel like from the beginning the enmity towards Caesar, a kinship to each other? What was the process like for you all?
Go ahead.
You? Okay. Well, a lot of questions. I would say that building that, I don't really know how to answer that. I think it's one of those sort of alchemical things when you get to work with another actor who, and I'll speak for myself, A, you admire, but B, you get to work with instantly and you feel like there's a connection there. And, when you are bound by the limits of 7 days to rehearse something, you got to make that happen quick. And what is so lovely about getting to work with someone like Keith is that he's a deeply intuitive actor, and it's all right there. And he's very giving, and he's very, he makes lots of different choices, and he wants to play. And that is exactly how I like to work. And so it made those scenes, and the great thing about having Sean there was that Sean very sort of perfectly and finely crafted our work to fit with each other so that there was this lovely arc to go with. And, one of the things that Sean did, one of the things that Sean said he did early on in this conversation, which was such a lovely thing, was he characterized it as getting out of the way. I wouldn't call it that so much as sort of stepping back and letting the actors do what they do, which sadly is a thing that a lot of directors do kind of get in the way and kind of enforce their own ideas on the machinations of the plot. And what was so great about what Sean did is Sean already did the work of streamlining the play. He sort of put it out there. This is how I see the world of Julius Caesar. And then he sort of just let us fill in those blanks. I was developing that ship. I had never met before. I had known of Keith. Keith, I was a fan. But yeah, it was just freeze. I think I froze. Did I freeze? I think I froze.
How about you, Aria? What was the process of working on this play like for you? It seems to me like your character, Octavius, is kind of the one that he kind of scoops the win out from all the other ones. He's kind of he's like the last man standing, more or less. All the others kind of kill each other, and he's kind of the one that.
I think it's just
is it my fault?
No, I think Rod's frozen.
Yeah.
Is Rodney and Jordan? Is it?
Yeah.
Are we
It's just us now. We've taken
Answer
over.
the question though, Aria. You know what he was asking.
You ask the question, you'll come back.
Yeah. I mean, like my job for as Octavius Caesar was very, very easy, Rodney. It was a very, very short recording time because I was pretty much only in episode 4. And my function is pretty much like I just sort of zoom in and scoop up or like swoop in and sort of just like fall into the throne. All of the problems that I was supposed to deal with being the political ones like Brutus and Cassius took care of themselves. So now it's just a matter of getting control of the city that has been put to the torch.
It seems that we have lost our host.
But we're still live on Facebook.
But we are still live on Facebook, so
Let's just keep talking.
yeah, we'll keep talking till Rodney comes back.
So what about an Octavius sequel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool, huh? I mean, it seems like it'd be like a TV series starring Aaron Paul, you
The
know?
one cut.
Aaron Paul.
Doesn't he show up in
Got you, Aaron Paul.
Anthony and Cleopatra?
He does. Yeah, he does.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aaron Paul shows up in Antony and Cleopatra.
I think you know there was this scene that we didn't play was the pricking of people to be killed, right? They created the list.
Yeah, that was one scene that I did not want to cut, but ended up having to.
Yeah,
I apologize.
the thing that I miss in that scene is the two elder men trying to intimidate
Yeah.
Octavius, you know, who's just come into the chaos, right?
Yeah.
But I think it always depends on how it's played, but I think he knows he's the closest thing to an heir.
Yeah.
I think he knows he's not to be even if he doesn't have the prowess. You're back.
True, there's a real confidence in him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that he spent much of his life not aware of. I mean, Julius Caesar and the man that he is I don't think he would have allowed Octavius to not be aware of who he was going to become and who he was trying to take over from. I'm sure Julius never thought Octavius was going to be able to fill his shoes, but he still expected him to, and made it clear to Octavius, you know, that's where he has to at least put on this front.
Welcome back, Rodney.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I had some technical difficulties here. I'm glad I didn't kick the rest of you off, so I'm glad that kept going.
Oh, Jordan, we lost Jordan.
We lost Jordan.
Again.
Lost Jordan. Oh, but we have this wonderful
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I'm into that look. Ooh, that chainmail.
Jordan, you're
No,
muted.
you did medieval reenactment, Jordan.
It was good.
No one was supposed to see that, huh?
Jordan, let's unmute you. Jordan's muted. Let's see if we can get him back on.
There he is.
Hi everyone.
Hello again.
I've switched rooms. I've switched rooms. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
They're okay now.
Okay.
All right, guys. So it seems like we're all starting to run into the point where we're either having difficulties with our connections or something. It seems like there's something in the air, but we have to beware of the Ides of March. Let's start to bring this discussion to a close. Again, if people want to catch this fantastic version of Julius Caesar from Sean Hagerty and the fine cast that we have here, we have Keith Hamilton Cobb, we have Jordan Barbour, we have Aria Shaghasemi, and we have Ashlie Atkinson of Shakespeare At. It's all available at Shakespeare-at.org. You can catch all 4 parts of the radio play. It's all there. It's all available for download or streaming. And you can catch the replay of this interview here tonight. Unfortunately, we tried to have our connection on YouTube as well. We had some technical difficulties with that. So we will repost this discussion to YouTube tomorrow. It's been live on Facebook for the past 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll post it on there as well. Again, my name is Rodney Hakim from the New York Shakespeare social media feeds. You can catch all of our content on Instagram at New York Shakespeare, on Twitter at NY Shakespeare, on Facebook at NY Shakespeare, and you can catch all this content on there. Again, visit Shakespeare At, download the episodes, listen to them on streaming. Sean, Keith, Jordan, Aria, Ashlie, thank you all for spending the evening with us tonight on the Ides of March, and congratulations on a fantastic version of Julius Caesar. individually, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
Are you asking all of us or Shakespeare At?
Shakespeare At, and then each of you individually.
You can find us at our website, as Rodney said, shakespeare-at.org, as well as on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I'll turn it over to you guys.
Just go to keithhamiltoncobb.com or americanmore.com, and that will give you access to the other platforms.
Keith is all over the place. Jordan?
I'm on Instagram. You can search my name, or Jordy Boy NYC. And then I'm also on Twitter, Jordan Barbour 1, and various other forms in that.
Okay. Aria?
I have an Instagram, but you can't really. I mean,
You can search in
you
the
can
battle.
find me. You can probably get closest to me listening to these episodes of Shakespeare that we put on the line.
Okay. All right. And Ashlie?
Aria's only on TikTok. That's all. That's it. I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok.
All right. So when we expand our platform to include TikTok, we will meet Aria and Ashlie over there. But in the meantime, this has been Rodney Hakim from New York Shakespeare on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Beware the Ides of March, and definitely check out shakespeare-at.org. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Okay, and let me disconnect.